Prepare yourself for a whole bunch of computers and systems from the 1960s to the early 2000s here at the third Canberra Vintage Computer Exhibition, which had a few new features and a new theme. Hi, K-Man here, and here's Mark and I setting up our computers on the night beforehand. Last year's theme was computers arranged in region of origin. This year, the theme is chronological order, so we've got on the back wall 1960s to the 80s, then more 80s on the centre aisle, and 90s to 00s on the other centre aisle. Side rooms also getting used for stuff like LANs, repairs, music and the console room. Then it's up bright and early the next day for a little bit of setup before the event starts. Fortunately, there was a coffee van which I heard was quite in demand later on. Entry to the event was free with the option to make a donation to help cover costs. Most of the systems were set up so you could go play on them, with a few others that were just sort of on display. And something new for this year's event was the seminars. Pat did a presentation on the forgotten 1977 microcomputer and the original Japanese Trinity of computers. Starting off my walk through the exhibition at the oldest end of the tables, there was a few interesting programs running on the machines like Eliza, for which you could have a good old conversation with the computer using a teletype machine. Some of the machines came from even deeper into the past, and it was just cool seeing a whole bunch of early computing devices. Someone there who could tell you a bit about those computers and brought along a few of them is Kerry, who did a talk on early computer memory technology, talking about some of the ingenious and obscure memory devices that came before the IC, and he even had a few examples which he handed around the audience. A few more computers in the 1970s section and some removable storage. We had a few text adventures to go and play on these machines right next to the big noise these were making. Kind of wild to think that that's probably about 5 or 10 megabytes of storage. It's rather cool just seeing all these machines set up and in action. Something almost magical, one might say. And what could be more magical than a sorcerer? Here it is with its wonderful amber CRT screen. This thing here, which kind of looks more like some sort of spy suitcase, is actually an IBM maintenance device. And here's an actual computer, an Altair, and another text game. As the day went on, even more people came along to go and have a look. I believe about 1,000 people came through the doors that day. It's on to the most represented decade at the event, the 1980s, and here's an Apple IIe looking like it came straight out of the local school system, for which I'm sure there was heaps of them in there. Next to it is a retro modern machine, an XT machine that was released in 2019. And next to that, an Amstrad. There's also this briefcase, which, kind of looks like something you would have trouble getting through airport security. Some Atari computers, a 400 and an 800. And here's one of the Japanese computers that got mentioned in Pat's seminar. Just chilling out together is 2 Commodore PETs, alongside a variety of other 8-bit Commodores. Some more interesting looking systems sitting right next to a whole pile of Sinclair machines. There we've got Spectrums and ZX80s, 81s, all sorts of different machines, new and old, and this other machine designed by Clive Sinclair. All sort of forming a bit of an unofficial British section which continued with these BBC microcomputers. And moving along the years, we got a Amiga Phoenix early 90s mod. Next to a much newer mod, an Amiga using a replica PCB in this rather nice clear case. And chilling quite harmoniously next to the Amigas is a few Ataris. And next to the Ataris, all manners of Tandy computers. A Mitsubishi MSX computer sitting next to another BBC Micro and a rather small Toshiba. I always feel like when there's so many different computers in the room, there's always going to be something that you've never seen before, or at least in person, and for me, it's the Naboo from Canada. And no way, this is actually a computer I remember from childhood. My parents owned one of these as sort of an alternative to buying a full-blown laptop. At the end of this little run of tables is a rather sleek-looking computer from South Australia. Back in the presentations room, Jeremy was giving this pretty awesome talk called Why Wasn't I Told This Earlier?, for which a lot of people came along to hear about maintenance of retro computers, capacitors, CRTs, and how to avoid blowing stuff up. Also a great reminder to go and check on your old gear to see if it needs a bit of care and preventative maintenance, or maybe get someone to do it for you. These Macs and the Apple IIc I think are only off because people were sort of reaching the end of the day and thinking about packing up. Here's Dick Smith, System 80, and a few other computers from our end of the globe, including an Aussie computer that got into a lot of schools, the Microbee. And we've now reached the computers Mark and I brought along, an X68000, MSX2, and Apple IIgs. When you came into the hall, you were greeted by this desk, which also had the Lucky Door Prize, which was a Commodore 64 Mini, won by this gentleman. Congratulations. What would a vintage computer exhibition be without a good game of Lemmings? We went from an era of beige to one of colours and various blacks and silvers. The Australian Computing Museum Society were there and supporting the event. They also had a demo where you could listen to what the internet sounded like in 1999. On a panel hosted by Jason, also known as Mr. Lurch, we had Adrian from the ACMS, Jeremy, Ian, myself, Pat, and Tony from Grumpy Oz Retro. Our topic was discussing the apparent meteoric rise of retro computing in recent years. In one of the side rooms was a whole lot of consoles connected up to old TVs and CRTs so you could play them like they were played back in the days, different decades and manufacturers, and many more than could actually be set up. You could go get competitive in the Doomland, which had been painstakingly put together in DOS using DOS networking software as well. A space had been put aside for all these instruments and retro computers so that we could get some sweet retro tunes pumping. And a spot for all the retro modern computers like the Mega 65, the ZX Spectrum Next. And if you know the 8-bit guy, you might be familiar with this computer, the Commander X16. The last presentation was a wonderful one to end the Vintage Computer Exhibition with. Lauren talking about killer robots and Death Rays, why I built them and how you can too. Or using old tech to inspire our kids to build a brighter future. And you could check out her Agape kit computers out in the exhibition hall. Right next to them was where all the computer repairs were getting done, including Mr. Lurch setting up his new pride and joy, an Amiga 4000T. By the looks of it, they were quite well prepared with all the tools that they've got here, and in the midst of repairing and playing with a few different computers. Instead of having sellers and vendors, there was a freebies table where anyone could contribute to it as long as they were willing to go and take back whatever they put on the table at the end of the day if it hadn't been picked up, and a lot of good stuff had been picked up earlier on. Which leads us to the end of the day, And what a good event it was. Big thanks out to Radford for the venue, also for all the exhibitors and organisers for making this happen. I'm posting videos for those seminars up on the channel. Also links for the event in the description. If you'd like to, please subscribe to the channel and all that good YouTube stuff. But most of all, thanks for watching.